So I was raised to be racist. My grandparents used the hard R. They called the store down the road the hard R store. They were probably some of the most racist people and let me know that if I ever brought somebody home that wasn't a part of my race, that I would be disowned. And I must say, I definitely disappointed them, being this beautiful lesbian who married a Filipino woman. This is truly just to show you that even though you were raised in a household that was racist, homophobic, bigoted, you don't have to be that way. I grew up thinking that me being gay was one of the worst things. I remember sitting there and just being like, please God, let me just like a guy. Let me just like a boy. I don't want my family to hate me. I don't want them to disown me. I remember my mom telling me that if her kid ever came home and said that they were gay, that she was going to disown them as well. So, I mean, I grew up in a very, very strong household of, you're going to do what I say and you can't be your own individual person. Look, you don't have to be your family. Just because you were raised that way doesn't mean that you can't grow. This day and age, we have so much knowledge out there to prove that these thoughts that they have is absolutely ridiculous. So be a good person. Love people. Love people. Okay? Just be good.
Hello guys, welcome once again to the channel. I hope wherever you are, you're having a great time. Now today we are going to delve into a topic that is quite interesting, if you ask me. Because we all know how racism has deep roots in our society. But what happens when one confronts their own biases and unlearns some of the stereotypes that they have had over the years? This is the case of George White, who has been speaking about his experience of being a former racist, as he calls himself. And he says that he knows what racism is. He knows what it takes to be racist. And that is why, after 40 years of being racist, he came to a point and realized that this thing that he's doing is not really helping him and is not even helping advance anything in the society. He became an anti-racist educator, someone who has spoken quite candidly through all the platforms that he has against how America is racist. We know how it is always very easy to be with the majority because we know also how blacks are being treated in the United States. There is a sense in which the entire American system was developed to ensure that blacks don't succeed. And therefore, if you find white people coming out, people like Tim Wise, who has been speaking and is a very, very good and well-educated anti-racist educator, he speaks against this kind of activities where blacks are seen as second-class people. Blacks are seen as people who don't have the ability to make any sensible decisions for themselves. George White has been speaking, and if you go to his TikTok channel, he has been speaking different times and saying some of the challenges that blacks are going through. And he has even used his platform to educate whites on how blacks have made positive contributions in the American society. We know that the media portrayals have always made it like blacks don't have anything to add or blacks have not made anything positive in the American system. But if you look at what George White is doing right now, you'll be able to see that he's making positive contributions towards educations that are very necessary when it comes to racial education and everything that comes with it. In today's video, we're going to look into some of these clips that he has been playing and talking about. You're going to be surprised how someone whom you thought could be your enemy could turn to be a friend and work towards your personal empowerment. I love what he's doing. And here are some of the videos that I've picked from him that you can listen and know how he's transformed over the years. Let's watch this, then come back and share our thoughts.
I am, guys, for the first 35 years of my life or so, I was incredibly prejudiced towards a lot of people. I did not have empathy for other human beings that were not just like me. It was taught to me. I was brought up around it. I feel terrible about it. And I've been doing everything I can since I really, truly became aware of how awful I was to turn it around and be a better human being. So I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys understanding.
You say that all whites are racist. Can you expound on that, please?
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's mellow, but whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made all, everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority.
I've been asked probably well over 1,000 times in the comments and messages why I chose to confront my own racism and my prejudice ideology. So I thought I'd just have an honest conversation with you and break it down over a few parts and let you see into the mind of someone like me, the way I grew up and the man I'm becoming. Now, here's the crazy thing. I've only ever known one racist in my life for sure, and that's me, because I can't speak into the hearts and minds of another human being and what they think and feel. That's not fair, and that's prejudicial of me. So I'm the only one I've ever known, so I feel I can speak with authority about this. I'm not calling out other people who are. This is simply about my evolution and the things I confronted and some of the difficulties and some of the beautiful parts of this. This is not an easy thing for me to do. This is kind of laying my soul bare. Now, why is it I grew up with so much prejudice and bias and discrimination in my life? Well, I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, and I am Arkansas proud. Let me just say that right off the top. But I grew up with people who taught me these things, and it was instilled in me. I mean, it was just reinforced over and over. And then for the most part, I lived in an echo chamber of other people who thought the same thing. So I didn't know it was possible to think any other way. I was raised Christian. I cannot explain to you why my faith in God, my morality, and my racism took so long to cross paths. I can't explain it, but it probably took about 40 years to figure that out. There's a whole series of events in my life, I guess, ultimately that led up to this. And prison was probably one of the biggest catalysts, because when you're on 23-1 lockdown with someone of a different color from you in the same cell, you shut your mouth and you listen. You ask questions. And I had so many different cellmates from different countries, from different races and heritages. And it just really opened my mind. And sitting in prison, I had a lot of time to think. And I had some old timers tell me I need to do my time. Don't let my time do me. And those are good words of advice. But I started digging deep into myself and my flaws, and because I was probably the biggest asshole I knew at that time, and I wasn't proud of that at all. And I knew I needed to change if I wanted to live a productive and healthy life and just be somebody likable. I just couldn't see the world for the way it really was. And that breaks my heart that it took me so long to see it. But the beauty that is born from this change, Amir, this growth is just crazy. God is amazing. At one time, I very much was the enemy. So I think it's important that you can see sometimes into the mindset of somebody like I was, so maybe that we can better understand it going forward. And again, these are just my experiences, my opinions, and my thoughts. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that I had prejudice and bias and discrimination and bigotry inside me. I knew this. Understanding that it was wrong and accepting that my character was flawed was way more difficult. People see what they want to see. I'm absolutely guilty of that. I only sought out information that further proved my ideology the way I thought, no matter how wrong it was. But I did this over and over, and it just further reinforced in my head that what I was reading and hearing was true. Accepting that you have a massive character flaw is not easy for anybody of any race or gender. It sucks. But you have to admit it. You have to confront that the way you think is harmful and hurtful, and it's not healthy, and it's not accurate of all things. So I realized the first step was admitting it. The second step was learning to forgive myself. White guilt and forgiveness. One of the most challenging things on this journey of trying to deconstruct my own racism is learning to forgive myself. That is a very difficult thing to do for most anybody, especially when it's a burden that you carry around so heavy that you don't know how to break it down. Again, these are my thoughts, my experiences, and my opinions only. And while I can't tell you how to learn to forgive yourself for something because it's different for everybody, it's absolutely crucial if you want to grow. I had to admit it to myself. I had to be accountable to myself. And then I had to put in the work. And that involves a lot of introspection, a lot of prayer. It's just something you can't take your foot off the gas of. You know what I mean? Forgiving myself doesn't absolve me of the things I've got to work out. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But until you forgive yourself, it's really hard to move forward. And the biggest thing I struggle with initially is what we call white guilt. And that looks different to probably everybody, because I was really concerned. I spent a lot of time thinking about it and praying about it, because if I did this out of some sort of guilt, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be sincere. And I realized and came to the conclusion, once I had forgiven myself, that I had thrown that yoke off me. Now I'm just free to love. I'm just free to grow and be open-minded and experience all these new things with an open and transparent heart. Racism is not a switch you can flip on and off. It doesn't work that way. It's a long process. It takes a lot of commitment. If you're really committed to being a racist in this country, you can't unsee what I'm about to show you. You might want to start checking Amazons for blankets, because this gas furnace behind me, you don't get to have one of those either, because that was invented by a black woman named Alice Parker around 1920. She received a patent on it. Yeah, that's how we stay warm today. I mean, if you love potato chips, they gotta go, because a man named George Crumb, a chef in New York, had sent French fries out with a meal and a customer complained. So what did Mr. Crumb do? He sliced potatoes so thin, fried them up, dumped a bunch of salt on them, and sent them out. And that is the American delight of potato chips. They gotta go. Here in the bathroom, Lotta Newman patented the first hairbrush with synthetic bristles in 1898. And she's just the third Black American woman to ever receive a patent. Now, I know this isn't going to affect those skinheads very much. In 1892, George Sampson of Dayton, Ohio, received patent number 476,416 for what is the forerunner of the modern dryer we use today. It's going to suck drying your clothes outside. In the late 1880s, Samuel Scotron of Pennsylvania patented the curtain rod. Ooh, that's going to piss off some white girls. It's going to be really hard to plan racist rallies without a color monitor. Invented by Mark Dean, an engineer at IBM, he is also on 3 of the original 9 patents of the IBM PC that came out in 1981. Did you know in 1897, Albert Crowell in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, developed the mechanized ice cream scoop? You know, the click, click that separates the ice cream from the spoon, changing the way ice cream is served. And if you're racist and an ice cream lover, it's going to get worse. I told you it's going to get worse. Augustus Jackson, the father of ice cream, pioneered many of the methods we have today to enjoy ice cream, including the way we salt it. Another thing about being a racist, you're going to have to give up the freezer and frozen foods, because Frederick McKinley Jones of Ohio, who was orphaned at 9 years old with a 6th grade education, a young biracial boy, grew up to invent Thermo King, which is the reason why we have frozen foods that are shipped and stored in stores and our homes. You got to give up ice cream and frozen pieces? So if you still want to be a racist, there are some things you're going to need to purge from your life. If you would, just put it out on the curb. I'll send some trucks around to pick it up, and we'll go give it to real Americans who really need it. Do you see that little doohickey on the wall right there, that little white thing? That's called your thermostat. That's how you control your AC. That was invented by David Crossway, who got his engineering degree right here in Indiana at Purdue University. He's so cold, he designed the heating system for Radio City Music Hall and Rockefeller Center. Sorry, racists. No AC this summer. This is really going to mess your shit up. The porcelain toilet as we know it was designed by Thomas Elkins in 1872. Hey, come here. How many racists does it take to change a light bulb? None. They don't want to be enlightened. Which is too bad, because the carbon filament in the light bulb that we've grown up and used, that lights up really bright, was invented by Lewis Latimer, who's one of the chief engineers for Thomas Edison, and he helped design the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell. I mean, you can't even do something as simple as open the door, because that door handle was patented in 1878 by Osborne Dorsey. Yeah, sorry guys. I mean, I guess you probably were raised in a barn. And if you think you want to call all your buddies to come meet you at the laundromat so you can wash your white sheets together, because let's face it, if you're still a racist, you don't have a dryer, you don't have a gas furnace heater, you don't have a thermostat to control your AC, you can't open your doors without a doorknob, and you especially cannot call your buddies without the cell phone. You're going to have to get rid of these, like I said, because Henry Sampson, a black genius inventor, patented and invented the gamma ray process, which uses radio waves to transmit and receive audio signals, which is what makes cell phones able to communicate with each other, and changed all our lives significantly. Listen, in all seriousness, if you still really, really are committed to being a racist, it's getting hard in the yard out here for y'all, because I've now made you aware of some things that you didn't know. And this is just a tiny tip of the iceberg of all the ways people of color have improved our lives in measurable and quantifiable ways. Our world would not be nearly as far along as it has without the inventions and contributions of all these Americans. So, again, I hope that this opens your eyes a little bit to how much white and black culture are actually intertwined in a good and great positive way. Have a great evening.
Why do white people always get accused of being racist? Great question. When people say we're racist, they're often pointing to this. We live inside systems that were built by white people for white people. And most of us were never taught to see those systems, let alone challenge them. Racism isn't just slurs or hate. It's who gets hired, who gets stopped, who gets protected, and who doesn't. And we benefit from that structure, whether we intend to or not. So when we're accused of being racist, it's often not about personal hate. It's about unacknowledged patterns. It's about how silence, defensiveness, and our lack of awareness uphold harm. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm doing this work too. But we won't get free by being offended. We get free by getting honest. I'm the anti-racist mum, and if you're ready to get free and unlearn this for yourself, your kids, and your community, click the link in my bio. I've got low-cost resources to help you get started. How did white people build the system that created racism? Great question. Let's break this down. Racism, as we know it today, is a construct. It didn't always exist in the way that we think of it now. It was developed to justify one thing: power. During European colonial expansion from the 15th century onward, white European powers needed an excuse to justify things like slavery, genocide, expansion, extraction, land theft, and exploitation. So they created a hierarchy: white at the top, everyone else below. This was then written into science, law, education, and obviously religion. It was then used to justify slavery, genocides, and the building of empires on stolen land. So that's what I mean when I say white people built the system. It doesn't mean that white people are responsible for what happened 400 years ago, but it does mean the system was built to benefit whiteness. And that benefit is still showing up strong in who gets access, who gets protected, and who gets punished. So if white people built the system, We white people certainly have a role to play in dismantling it. That's not blame, it's accountability and responsibility. I'm the anti-racist mum, and if you're ready to unlearn your social conditioning, hit the link in my bio for low-cost resources that will help you do just that, and keep following me for more uncomfortable truths.
He embodies an example that every white person needs to adopt. We cannot continue to be racist in a society that is globalized like the one we have today. It is time everybody should come out and talk about how they need to develop themselves. If you look into it keenly, you'll get to know that racism, they are there to benefit white elites, people who benefit from the division of black people. And one thing that has always been there is that the white elite convinces poor whites that they are better than their most enlightened black people. And that really makes them feel that ego of self-importance. And that is what perpetuates racism. But then if you look at it from a deeper perspective, you realize that the person who gains at the end of this entire debacle is that white elite, because they have created stratifications within the society. So they have different messages that they will keep feeding to these different people. It is something that we really need to get into, understand some of the intricacies that the society has to ensure that these kind of challenges exist in our society. So George White is a good example of a person who turns from things that he knows are not innate for every human being, and he works towards rising up against racism and prejudices that have been directed towards black people. I like him to a greater extent. George White, a former self-confessed racist, has undergone a profound transformation that has positioned him as an influential advocate against racism and for black empowerment in America. Once entrenched in a mindset shaped by prejudice, White eventually confronted the roots of his biases and chose to publicly renounce his past beliefs. This personal reckoning became the foundation for a new mission, using his platform to educate others about the dangers of racism and the importance of racial reconciliation. By openly acknowledging his former views, White adds to credibility to his message and demonstrates that change is possible, even for those who once contributed to systemic hate. White has accepted that the society created a monster in him, and he has used his wisdom and the experience that he has had over the years to change his perspective, and he owns up to the mistakes that he has lived. He owns up to the mistakes that he has seen people do, his own white people do to others. And that really tells you that nobody is ever born a racist. We are all taught to be racist. Because if you are born a racist, there is no possibility of you changing. If I'm born a racist, I can't change. And that is why once I'm born a black person, there is no possibility of me changing to be a white person. And that is also the same. So we learn that racism and the tendencies that come with it are things that we learn from the environment that we associate ourselves with. So that is why you find that George White, after having learned about the challenges that he has been going through, about the problems that he has been creating to black people, he owns up to the mistakes that he's had. And this shows us that nobody can never change. Everybody has a chance at life, and everybody has a chance to be a better person each and every day. White has since leveraged public speaking, media appearances, and social initiatives to combat racism in tangible ways. His speeches often focus on journey from ignorance to awareness, using his own story as a mirror for others to examine their prejudices. In schools, churches, and community centers across the country, he speaks about the psychological and social forces that fuel racism and how individuals can actively work to dismantle them. His honesty and willingness to confront uncomfortable truths resonates with diverse audiences, sparking conversations that challenge long-held assumptions and encourage mutual understanding. Because of him accepting what he's been taught by the society that he lived in, he has now gone to the society and to the community. And even if you look at most of his Twitter feeds, whatever he posts are always about educating blacks and educating white people about the dangers of racism and how the system has worked against blacks to ensure that they look bad when they have been very, very beneficial to the entire American system. If you look at the entire American system, the person and the people who built it to be what it is today are black people. Black worked as slaves, and they helped revolutionize American economy through agricultural revolution. So you can't really come and say that blacks have not added anything to the society. They need to be respected, and there is no reason for anybody to come and start saying that they have an opportunity to be racists. I don't believe and I don't buy that. We must learn the mistakes that we are making, and we are not allowed at any moment to feel like we are a people who must be against one another. All we know is that we are all a human race. We must respect each other and know that our skin tones does not remove anything from us. It really makes us be better, and it makes us understand who we are in the best way possible. Beyond awareness, George White champions the empowerment of black communities by supporting initiatives that promote education, economic opportunity, and leadership development. He has collaborated with grassroots organizations and civil rights groups to amplify black voices and advocate for policy changes that address racial disparities. Through mentorship programs, scholarships, and community investment, White contributes to creating pathways for young black individuals to thrive. His efforts underline a key principle that true allyship involves not just denouncing racism, but actively uplifting those affected by it. In essence, George White's journey from racism to redemption underscores the power of accountability and transformation. By turning his past into a platform for change, he exemplifies how former perpetrators of racism can become allies in the fight for justice. His work continues to challenge others, especially those from similar backgrounds, to examine their own roles in perpetuating or dismantling systemic inequality. Through advocacy, education, and empowerment, George White stands as a powerful testament to the idea that confronting one's past is the first step towards building a more equitable future. George White has spoken many times, and we must really appreciate his contribution towards educating blacks and educating whites about the dangers of racism and why there is no place for racism in our society. We must accept to be a just society for ourselves and for others. Let's not have a system that works against certain people. Even as we know that the white power structures are very powerful in America, it will take individual decisions for people to fight and dismantle these white power structures. And people like George White, people like Tim Wise are able to educate and inject into us the sense that we need to have to appreciate the fact that the difference that we have in skin tones does not really define who we are personally. Share your thoughts down in the comment section, and if you're watching us for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and share. Thank you, and let's meet on the next one.